All right, class. So, you have an argument essay as your final exam essay. So it's always good to look at an example of the kind of essay that you're going to be writing. And this essay by Ashley Sims here from Real Student is an argument essay where she's going to be arguing that high schools should distribute condoms and also have safe sex education that focuses on a realistic approach rather than an abstinence only approach. Okay? So, the first thing, if you remember from the assignment sheet lecture that I told you to do, is establish that there is a problem and also argue for several solutions to that problem. And the main one should be in the thesis. And then there should be a lot of other main points in this introduction as well. And that is exactly what she does here. So if you'll look at the first, few sentences here, from where a day rarely goes by when a teenager does not think about sex, all the way down to so right here. So who is left up to pick up the slack when parents become unapproachable teens? All of that is her establishing that there is a problem. Sentence one, teenagers always think about sex. Sentence two as well. Sentence three, we live in a society where it's becoming more common at a younger age, but it's still taboo, so people don't talk about it as much, and there's like religious beliefs and moral values that vary all over the place. So sentence four, a lot of times teens learn things about sex through their peers, through their friends, through older friends, because it's less awkward that way rather than talking to parents. And that creates some misinformation, some people giving information that aren't mature enough to be given advice. It creates problems. Again, this sentence here, most teens avoid talking to their parents about sex at all costs, is establishing that problem as well. And parents don't have an open line of communication, and there may be punishment for teens wanting to have sex, all that stuff. Anyways, it all keeps the cycle of pregnancy and the spread of STDs going, which causes hundreds of thousands of unwanted pregnancies and other issues. So she uses a rhetorical device here, a question, to set up her thesis. And her thesis is this. Notice it's more than one sentence. Schools need to step in for the vast number of parents who do not know how to effectively educate their teens. That's one point she's going to be making. Accessible contraceptives and sex education are necessary in schools because they can prevent STDs and unwanted pregnancies while recognizing the reality that teens will actually have sex. So we might as well make sure that it's safe. So she's got about 3 points in that sentence. And this is a 2-sentence thesis that's complex, and that's what you're going for if you really want to move beyond middle school and high school writing. All right. So here's our first body paragraph here, up at the top. Basically, this whole body paragraph, you got the main point sentence here, the STDs spread through high schools because teenagers don't know how to or don't want to engage in safe sex practices by using condoms. So she makes a main point, and notice that she backs it up with a quote. And she has an introductory phrase here, studies show, all right, or she's introducing the idea of studies, so we know she's not just saying it, it's coming from a source. And then she gives us her information. Now notice she paraphrases this. She puts it in her own words because it was probably several sentences and overly wordy, and she just needed the 1 in 4 statistic that are going to get an STD to back up her point. Now, if you'll notice in the citation, there is a quote, and if we go to the works cited page here, you'll notice that her quote comes from this source, U.S. Teen Sexual Activity Kaiser Family Foundation. So a lot of times these big companies or corporations or, things like the CDC, where it's a bunch of professors and scientists working for them, they publish things as a group instead of as an individual author. So that's why the title in quotations is being used as a citation. All right. Now she's going to, now that she's told you that there is a problem and she's proved that there is a problem with a quote, she's going to make one of her points that schools need to provide condoms to students in order to slow the spread of STDs and keep their schools safer from sexually active teens. And this is interesting use of logic that she uses here that's going to carry her through the rest of the essay. She claims the purpose of school is to educate students and give them every tool necessary in order to succeed in the world. Now, what's interesting about her use of logic here, and this is something that you can do, is she's given us something that we can't argue with. A school's purpose is to educate students and to make them successful in the world. So you'll see for the rest of the essay, she's going to play on the fact that we agree with this logically to back up her point. Since schools are supposed to educate us, well, she's going to use the word sex education, sex education, to know that sex education is a part of education, part of these tools and protection that school's supposed to give us as we go into the world. She's also going to play on the idea that it's the school's job to protect us and to keep us from getting STDs or pregnant in order to succeed. And that's, you'll see she's going to use that over and over again. Notice when she says sex education should be no exception, she uses strong, forceful, short wording to get a point across. We looked at that in the rhetoric essay when we looked at the President Bush's essay, I believe. All right. So she just essentially spells out her points of logic here. If we educate students, we'll keep them from contracting these things. It may even save their life. And then she, brings in AIDS and another quote from U.S. Teen Sexual Activity, to back up how, ultimately it could end their life. They can't succeed in life if you're dead. All right. Her next body paragraph is, again, stating the problem. Adolescents are at a higher risk. And then she's starting to point at the fact that, look, if parents are unable to or won't help their children practice safe sex, then it's the school's job, because we've already agreed that it's the school's job to educate students. We've already agreed that it's the school's job to protect students. So if parents aren't doing it, then it's the school's job to step in and do it. One point she makes is that adolescents may have trouble obtaining condoms and birth control outside of school because of, like if you live in the country and you don't have a way to drive to a health department or somewhere that sells stuff, that's kind of hard. May not be able to afford to. Maybe a small town where everybody knows you. Okay. So one issue that I do have with her here is that she paraphrased the source from Dodd, but she did not give us a phrase that showed where her research started and where her writing ended. I would take off points for that if I saw it in one of my essays. You have to have some kind of introductory phrase to show, hey, this is where my research starting, and then it ends with the citation. If you don't, you get into trouble with possible plagiarism with it, trying to make it look like you wrote more of the essay than you did, and you're really using the research to fill in those gaps of what you didn't write. All right. Okay. So the next body paragraph, we're talking about pregnancy, and that pregnancy is one of the main problems that girls face when dropping out of school. And again, she makes a point. She uses research to back it up. You should see this pattern that's developing, and that's the pattern that you should follow in your essay. Okay. Notice again, a main point sentence similar to the thesis should be the responsibility of our academic institutions to safeguard these students from pregnancies by educating them when no one else can. Okay. So again, she ties it back to the school's job, supposed to be helping our students succeed. So obviously teenage pregnancy is an issue, an impediment to that. So it's the school's responsibility to deal with it. Another thing that she points out is that she uses this kind of bit of logic here. A condom is cheaper than raising a child, and that's pretty good. And then her last sentence in this paragraph, she points out that this starts a pattern where children of teen mothers are 22% more likely to have children of their own before 20, establishes that this dropping out of school and having children may become, like a pattern. This paragraph here, this little small paragraph, just kind of repeats a lot of her main ideas. I don't really even think it's very necessary. Anyways, okay, so now she's going to start dealing with opposition argument in these next two paragraphs, which is something you have to do. So she basically takes the opposition who has preached this abstinence-only classes like we have here in the state of Georgia and doing many of the Bible belts where Christianity is very prevalent. And what we found out about that is it has the opposite effect. Anywhere where abstinence-only classes are taught, STDs and pregnancies and abortions skyrocket. So, good job there, religious crowd. Anyways, she is pointing out some of the problems with this. The abstinence-only classes don't, face the reality that they're only less than 1% of the population actually, marries their sweetheart from high school. That people are going to have multiple partners and have sex. And so by providing condoms for students, the school acknowledges that they're going to do this and avoids this risky pattern of behavior. So she follows this up with some research that backs up what she's saying about these abstinence-only programs. And that's pretty much this whole body paragraph. So she also goes into another rebuttal or a debunking of her argument, her opposition's argument, and she disproves it again here. So she is pointing out the idea that many parents argue that providing access to condoms at school is promoting the sexual behavior of teens. And so what this paragraph does is, again, uses research and logic to point out that teens who have access to condoms are no more likely to actually use them. All right. Okay, and this paragraph at the top here is another rebuttal. It is extension of that previous idea. I'm pretty sure that the class can agree that even though that our health department on campus gives out free condoms, that doesn't mean necessarily everybody's going to have a gigantic campus-wide orgy just because there's a bowl of condoms that people can use in there. Doesn't quite work like that. So that's what her paragraph here is essentially arguing in less, less funny terms, I guess. That basically looks, if students need them, they'll be there. If students, don't need them or don't want them, it doesn't matter because nobody's making them do anything. There's no statistic that shows that students are more likely to have sex just because there's a bowl of condoms laying around. All right, so her conclusion's a little bit on the weak side. All she did was just restate her main points in kind of a blah, blah, blah way. It's always best that you tie all your main points together and show that there's a relationship between them. And this, again, is your opportunity to leave your reader with a final statement, so it needs to be powerful. It needs to be emotional. This is your last chance to leave them with an idea. All right? Notice that her works cited page is in MLA format. Notice it's in alphabetical order, as yours should be in the annotated bibliography and in the argument essay. Okay, so that has been an example of an argument essay, and you need to read it to examine it. I will email it to you. You need to look at how this student wrote this and, try to kind of, do the same thing.